What is going on, everybody? And welcome to the From Mourning to Action, Powerfully Working Through Loss podcast. I am your host, Dr. Damon Silas, and I am thrilled to have this next guest on. Now, I know I say that all the time, but this particular man, I'm very blessed to have met here in the Lake Norman, Charlotte area. And he is just, I really don't understand how he finds time to do everything that he does. He is not only a newly published author of The Master Within, he is also the owner and founder of Collaborative Solutions Group. He is part founder of a networking group here in this area. He is a John Maxwell certified coach. He is a father to 2 young children. He is a Facebook poster. Please welcome my friend, Titus Bartolotta.
Hey, how are you? Thank you so much for having me on the program, Doctor. This is a treat for me. I've been looking forward to it ever since I was lucky enough to get the invitation. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you do me a favor? I may have missed a thing or two. So can you tell the people anything that I may have missed?
Well, I think number one, I'm a sweater vest model. We do, you failed to
How did I forget that? My bad.
No, I'm kidding. So, I guess, no, you nailed it. I'm the owner of Blue, Business Leaders Unleashed, the owner of Collaborative Solutions Group. My wife and I founded a charity 4 years ago called the Lotta Foundation, and I'm just trying each and every day to live and work in a way that makes people around me better. I just want to win and want to succeed, and maybe far more than chase success, I'm super excited to chase significance, which really just means making everyone around you better and enhancing the situation. So that's me, and I'm excited to be on your program because I think there's a lot of you.
Man, well, thank you so much. And you're absolutely right. The number of people that you touch in this community and beyond is astonishing. And, to me, it's a great example of leading from the heart. Everything that you do is just so full of passion and so full of energy, and it's just all from the heart. So that's what I love about you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So that being said, Titus, this podcast is about, talking about loss. We don't stay in that, but we talk about how you've worked through it. And I really wanted to have you on, as I was saying before we started recording, is I think you're just such a great example of doing. Every time I turn around, you're doing something new and different. You always got ideas flowing through you and to you. So I want to talk a little bit about the losses that you've experienced that you would like to share with the audience, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. So I, like many of your listeners, likely have experienced loss in my family. Folks have lived lives and then found the end of their journey. And I remember probably the first loss in my life that impacted me, that really affected my worldview, and something that created an emotion that I had to experience and deal with. Mm-hmm. And this is not to minimize the losses that were less impactful, but I was young. And so sometimes when we're young, how we deal with, how we understand and perceive things are differently. But the first loss that created a mile marker in my life would probably be my grandfather. His name was Joseph Bartolotta, and I actually named my son Josiah, with the word Joe being in there as a tribute to him. Mm-hmm. He was, in every sense of the way, a father figure for me. Mm-hmm. He was an accomplished man. He was probably the first person in our family that found a way to parlay bad decisions and poor direction in life into something salvageable, and changed his life late in his life, changed his entire being, the way he thought, felt, and reacted. He completely demonstrated out loud what transformation looked like, where somebody could be one thing and end up being something different. So when he passed away, it was devastating. It was a really big deal for me at that time to deal with. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, and thank you for sharing that. It sounds like he was an amazing man that was able to turn some things around for his life
Yeah.
to be a wonderful example for you.
Sure.
How, when you're that young, you don't have necessarily, or some people don't have us, they don't tell us like what to do at that point.
Yeah.
So at what point, and maybe you didn't realize, or, it just became a part of your everyday experience, but was there a point where you ever realized, wow, this had a huge impact on me?
Yeah, every so often I think of him. I guess graduating high school was a big deal because my grandfather was so desperate to see me do that. No one in our family had graduated high school. And so for this immigrant man who spent the vast majority of his life here in America, fighting, serving in our armed forces, giving everything to this great country that was going to be the way out and the salvation for this family, he was disappointed, I guess, that no one had stuck with education and found a high school diploma as part of their toolbox. And so it was a big deal for him to come to graduation, and he passed away just a few years before that. So I remember on graduation day was maybe the first time I felt the burn or the sensation of loss since I had felt it the day I found out. So when I found out, there was an initial dealing with that emotion, and then it stayed dormant and didn't come back until that moment. But then since graduation, it's come up time and time again. I mean, just any moment of significance or success, I found myself wanting to share with him those moments and not being able to, or to get his advice in a given moment and not be able to. I watch my children today, and I think of how he was, since he had kind of this dual role of grandfather and father. And so I watch my children, and I think of him often. So I guess the first time was I was about 15 years old when he passed away. And then 17, 18 years old was when I graduated high school. So it sat and wasn't a part of my world, or at least not consciously, for years. And then ever since graduating high school, there's really never a week that goes by that his life and the great memories in there aren't part of my day-to-day life.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point because, a lot of times when we experience loss, sometimes it's not a part of our conscious everyday experience, but it's during those times when we really want to reach out to that person and share the good news, or share about your children, or, about a graduation, or, one of those significant life events, where I know I've done this in the past, where I've wanted to pick up the phone to call that person, and it's like, wait, I can't anymore.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you, or?
Absolutely. And I wouldn't say that it just has only transpired with just my grandfather. I mean, there's been a few losses in my life where I wanted to pick up the phone and I couldn't. And what's so impactful is that the relationship that I enjoyed with my grandfather, which was a very positive one, I had a very opposite relationship with a few other individuals that I had lost in my life. And it didn't seem to matter the relationship. It didn't seem to matter if we had a good relationship or a bad relationship. The desire to want to pick up the phone was still equally the same. The want to communicate, to pick their brain, to, in many cases, to say, look, I did it. I did this thing. Even when it was from a place of either humility or even pride, when maybe the emotion was misplaced and I wanted to go, you thought I couldn't, but look what I did. Or even when it was from this wonderful, sweet place of, you always believed in me and look what I did. So it didn't seem to matter the emotion. It didn't seem to matter the core center of where it came from, or the relationship with the person that I no longer had in my, within my reach. I still very much so found myself throughout life wanting to communicate with them, and then realizing that death is very final.
Yeah, there's a physical finality So do me a favor, and I want to get a little bit into the action plan. And as we talk about the action plan and working through and how you've gotten to the space where you are today as the man I see in front of me today, I want to start with the A, and the A is for affirmations and things that you may have said to yourself along the way that to just keep pushing, to keep going. Maybe there were days when you didn't feel like it, or maybe that never happened to you. But what have you said to yourself to just keep going?
Yeah, so for me, affirmations started with reading verses in the Bible. Before I created my own affirmations, or before I read a book of affirmations, my first words of inspiration and motivational direction to myself really came from reading God's Word and hearing where it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The book of Luke says that all things that are impossible are made possible through Christ. So there were words that constantly brought me to a place of peace. It brought me to a place of thinking that I can, I will, I'm able, I'm capable. It was always rooted in I'm able because of my God. I can because he did. I will overcome because he built me to overcome. And so those were some of my first affirmations. I know that I then fell in love with some great leaders, Mother Teresa, Dr. Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, some of these people that I read their one-liners and then decided to go chase their life and find that they motivated through their battle cry, through their call to action, to be greater than you think you can be. And so those words became my language every day. I found that even though I grew up in a neighborhood and lived in a childhood that was riddled with ghetto, angry, bitter, negative language, I found these words of uplifting love and positivity always seem to be bigger than the noise. You see, everyone else's language turned into noise. And I realized that words are so powerful. The Word of God in John says that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And I realized that the Word, any word, could revolutionize and change. I realized that when somebody said, let's go to war, those words were so important. When somebody said, peace, it stopped all the fighting. So I realized that words mattered, what I said mattered, and therefore everyone else's negativity stopped being words and started being noise. And it was easy for the words to be recognizable in the midst of all that, for me at least.
Man, no, that's so powerful, and it's this reminder that even in the darkness, if we put the negativity as darkness, there was still light. You were still able to find light. And, I think, was it Martin Luther King who says, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do it. And in our words, our lightness, our light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Men love the darkness. They like the blemishes to be hidden. We put filters on our pictures when we take selfies, and rarely do we put a filter that brightens and lightens up something. It generally creates a haze, right? Even when we put a filter that appears to be brighter than the original photo, we're really putting a haze. We're darkening the reality in the original moment. And so, a doctor never says, are we ready to do surgery? Are the tools ready? Are the nurses ready? Do we have everything ready? Okay, great. Turn all the lights off and let's start cutting this person.
Right.
Like
I wouldn't want to be in that operating room.
I've never heard a mechanic be like, okay, we're ready to work on the engine. Shut all the lights off so we can see nothing.
Let's go, right.
So I think that when we turn the lights on and when we defy what we might feel as a safe comfort place, we get to work on stuff, right? And we get to enjoy the goodness that comes from that. Yep.
Man, it just reminds me of a conversation I had a couple of weeks ago where we were talking about that. Some people are comfortable with the darkness, right? Yeah. It's like when after you get up from a night's sleep and you turn on the light, your eyes just like, you're like, oh, I don't want to see.
Yeah.
But as you take some time to adjust, the light becomes more and more bearable.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we just need a dimmer instead of an on.